Welcome to Exploring the Mystical Side of Life with your host, Linda Lang.
Hi, this is Linda Lang from ThoughtChange.com, and I have a real treat for you this week. I have Dr. Gabriel Cousens with me. Dr. Cousens is a wild, liberated mystic and a holistic doctor. Welcome, Gabriel.
Linda, very happy to be on your show. I love to talk and support people who are living in the mystical world.
And your life adventure has really been quite fascinating. You have had a spiritual perspective most of your life, if not all of your life, and you've also bridged three different spiritual traditions: the Jewish tradition, the Hindu or Vedic tradition, and the Native tradition.
And I want to start with a prayer, merging the heavens and earth, merging the heart and the mind. It's the same principle. So I'll start with this prayer because it's an energetic.
Perfect.
Okay. Vashimiku Kudusha Brihu Ushinate Bi'il or Imulaya Chimike Bavavke Biadashlam Shem Kusriel Kolam. Amen. So feel that merging of heart and mind, heavens and earth, because that's key to the whole mystical way of experiencing the world. Okay.
I'm wondering how that came about, how you searched in these three places and what kind of similarities you found.
So in 1943, 77 years ago, I was born in Chicago, and in my first year I developed miliary TB, which in essence in 1943, when there's no treatment, is a death sentence. And that brought me immediately into the question of death. Somehow my mother refused to listen to the doctors and pulled me through. That's a good start. But from that, I began asking the question, what is this? What is the meaning of death? So that's how I started my mystical path, so to speak. When I was 8, I began to have vision of people in white who were clearly mystics. But born in Chicago, living in Chicago, who knew what that was about? And there was no one to talk to. Okay? One of the reasons why your program is important, because at least there's a forum for people, so they're not isolated. Death continued to be part of my life. My older brother, who I was extremely close with, was killed in a car accident when I was 16. And that put me into more overtly into a mystical way. I began meditating and doing, communicating with him actually, okay? And then at 21, my father died, and at 33, my mother died. And so I'm still asking, what is this mystery of death? And what I really came to after I began working under, learning under Swami Muktananda. This is obviously the Hindu or Vedic tradition. In 1975, I met Swami Muktananda. I received Shaktipat from him, which is the awakening of Kundalini. I merged into the nothing, and on the way out of the nothing, a little voice rang out and said, "There's no death for the self." And that was my answer, that the self is eternal and the soul doesn't die. I got my answer, which was really, really important, and began then to work and to meditate very intensely, 6 hours a day for 7 years, and chant the name of God 4.5 hours a day. And at that point, the whole mystical world opened up. I began having visions, and literally some of these visions would become physical. For example, Sai Baba of Shirdi, who left his body in 1918. I'm walking down the street with my second guru, Swami Prakashananda, And Sai Baba Shruti actually materializes. Now, he doesn't just materialize. He puts his hand out, energy comes out of his hand, and it's a blast that knocks me over.
That's pretty amazing.
These are obviously mystical experiences, but the point I'm making is beings come actually from the astral plane and can materialize. Now, that's happened to me several times in my life. Another time that happened was with the goddess Lakshmi, the goddess of spiritual and physical wealth. And I was, again, meditating in the morning, and she materializes and moves towards me and merges with me and actually transfers the essence of her femininity into me, more than just energy, a part of herself into me, which is something we talk about in the Torah tradition. It really does happen. It happened a third time. I was meditating in a cave in Israel above the Dead Sea for 3 days without food and water. And the image of Abraham appeared and transferred two pieces, his loving kindness and also his spiritual warriorship. And again, it was a transfer of specific part of him, energy, into me. So these mystical experiences weren't just like on a certain plane. They became physical. They materialized. So that's kind of a little bit how my spiritual, mystical life was going on. It happened in all the traditions, and had some more visions, and then a voice rang out. I'm always listening to the voice of God. This is very important to the whole spiritual path. And said, now go to your roots. And that took me again into the more Torah roots, biblical roots. Okay, but somewhere along the way, part of my roots were also Native American. And since I was having visions also of Crazy Horse, a Lakota tradition, I got interested in doing the sun dance. So I became a 4-year sun dancer. And in the final year, I did what's known as the Eagle Dance. I was just drawn into these things. It was just natural. I didn't think about it. It's like, okay, I need to do this. And so that's how the three traditions happened. But it came from a mystical base to begin with. And each of the traditions had something unique to offer as part of the total picture. So not like each one was complete in itself, but they each had their gift. And that's really how it all ties together.
Now, Dr. Cousens, I want to really thank you for doing that little opening prayer, because I could really feel my crown chakra open and all of this beautiful spiritual energy coming in. Could you tell us what tradition that is from?
This is part of the morning prayer in the more Hebrew tradition.
That's beautiful, just beautiful. Now, we're talking about spiritual liberation, and as you share your story with us, I mean, you spend a lot of time every day meditating.
Yeah.
A lot of time. And that's not necessarily possible for all of the listeners. So I hope you have a little bit of guidance or wisdom you can share with them so that they can connect more deeply with the spiritual without such demanding rituals.
It's a good question. I just want to give you context. When I was in India, it was with my wife and my 2 children. So I was also acting as a householder. I wasn't just somebody in a cave. So one of the challenges to people with families, like myself, is how to balance all this. But what I have evolved, to answer your question, is really how do we create a quiet mind to transcend it? And that's key to really the mystery of my book, Into the Nothing, is you have to go beyond the mind. I have what I call the 6 foundations. The first foundation is our diet. It's a plant-based diet, 100%. and at least 80% live food. For me, 100%. But okay, so that's first. And also spiritual fasting twice a year, which I lead worldwide. Second, what we call yoga asana, yoga movements, breathing exercises, and sacred dance. I love to dance, but when you're doing sacred dances, there's an ecstasy to the dance. Third is service and charity. There needs to be an outreach of our heart to the world. So I'm actually have programs in 42 different countries around diabetes prevention and organic farming, and whatever else is needed in those countries, Africa, Mexico, different places. The fourth is working with a spiritual teacher if you are ready. Not everybody's ready to work with a spiritual teacher, but the spiritual teacher can see behind you, so to speak. Okay, so there's a role. The fifth foundation is as much meditation as possible. Now, I recommend, because at the level we're talking about, we're not talking about, oh, I think I need to lower my blood pressure. We're talking about opening up to mystical experiences. So I recommend trying to meditate at least an hour a day, and best an hour twice a day is very, very powerful at sunrise and sunset. So those are kind of the minimums, at least an hour a day is what I'm saying. Most everybody, if you're really serious spiritually, I'm a householder, I'm running a full medical practice, I'm doing all these things, I still make time. Why? Because it's important to me.
That intention is really important.
Yes.
Your desire. It's like putting the call out.
So you have to show up. In my book, Into the Nothing, I have a lot of poetry. And one of the points I make in that is lots going on, and all I have to do is show up, because the process gets going and it does itself. So we just have to show up and be aligned. I'm going to call it aligning our will with God's will, aligned with the cosmic river of life. So showing up, very important, but consistently showing up, not just occasionally. So yes, you're hearing it takes some effort. It does. If we're going to go any deeper than having an occasional mystical experience, yeah, you got to show up on a regular basis.
It's completely possible for people to have spontaneous mystical experiences. That's what happened to me. Sounds like that's what happened to you as well at times.
That's a starting point.
And I think when that does happen, I mean, it's just so all-encompassing that it then isn't a hardship to create your life on that spiritual path.
Right, to activate the opening to all these mystical, beyond the mind experiences. Because you get it, now what are you going to do with that? You know, I write in my book, because I say all I ever learned from life was from meditating, playing football, and sacred relations. So what's football have to do with it? Well, the truth is, football for me took me beyond my normal limits. And I would go into mystical states, not only just the games, but even in practice, because I was going beyond my limits. But when football season ends, what happens next? That's where I got into more meditating, because, well, you can get mystical states doing skydiving. What about something simple like just meditating? So what I learned was, okay, let's find a simple way to go about this. And that where I have control and I can do it anywhere. I don't have to jump out of an airplane to have a mystical experience or climb a mountain to do that. So that's how we evolved that. And then the last part is what we call, again, I mentioned Shaktipat or Haniha in the Western tradition, because it's in all the traditions actually, which is the awakening of the spiritual force. Of Kundalini or of what we call the Ruach Kadesh, that actually plays an important role. That's where I really opened up in the spiritual life. And that was started with Swami Muktananda. He has since empowered me, after 7 years when he kind of acknowledged me as liberated, empowered me also to be a vehicle for that Shaktipat energy. So those are the 6 foundations. Now, I also have the sevenfold peace because I'm looking at how can we live a natural way of living. So it also has peace with the body, which I mentioned, peace with the mind, but also peace with the family. That's a path of sacred relations. As a mystic in different ways, I see that relationship is a spiritual path because people can inspire each other to go to higher levels in relationship, and that context is. And the other thing about relationship in our world, particularly in the West versus the East where that's not very emphasized, is that, as I point out again in my book, okay, I go a whole thing about sacred relationship, is that we can create the space for the other to be really connect with their soul. So we're all born originals. Most people die copies. And the whole idea is to become original again. And so in relationship, we can create the space for each other to do it. Plus, the whole interaction in relationship, of course, is pushing enough buttons to help us evolve spiritually. So that's kind of the pieces that I'm saying. You know, meditation, what not just playing football, but going beyond ourselves in different ways, and the power of a sacred relationship, which means marriage or relationship, sacred friendship, for the point of evolving spiritually. And all those bring you in the mystical experiences. Clearly, in the male, female, or it could be male too, but the coming together, the merging into oneness can take you into a mystical experience. So that's kind of the way of life. That's sacred relation. And then we have relationship with community, peace with the community, peace with all cultures, and Native American is peace with the living planet, nature, oneness with nature, seeing God in nature, a peace with the plant world, peace with the animal world, peace with the human world, and then what I call sacred ecology, understanding we are one. This is my experience, more mystical. I'm one with the living planet. I'm not an environmentalist because that's a separation. I'm one with the living planet, and then peace with God. So that's a natural way of living that really keeps us going into the mystical world. And that's the key, is how do we create it into our life, not as a spiritual practice, but as a way of life. And I call it the holistic liberation way. But I am talking about a way of life now. In other words, it's not separate from ourselves. There's no split there.
It's a way of being rather than doing.
Yes, very good.
I'd like to go back to the sacred relationships. And I'm wondering just how conscious one needs to be in their intention for their relationship to be sacred. Even if you're not conscious, doesn't your, close, intimate relationship with another kind of naturally bring about your strengths and also your shadow parts for you to work on?
Yes. Now, the difference is I try to help people really get, you're getting married. This is a spiritual path. Marriage is not the big word today, but you're entering into a sacred relationship, however you want to define it. And it's a spiritual path. Now, that intention means it affects how you look at it. Okay, so they used to call it the 7-year itch, but what happens is maybe after about 2 years, as a family therapist, I know it, people are, their family of origin issues come up, their egoic issues come up, and we can say, this is a problem, or we can say, what a gift, what an incredible gift, and we're helping each other work through these things. So, but that's the intention. So if you have the intention to sacred relationship, it's a gift. And that's true with life. Again, in my book, Into Nothing, one of the main points I make is all life experiences can be seen as something to elevate ourselves spiritually. It's how we see it is key. And that's the key with a relationship. So if you enter it with a mindset that this is a spiritual path, it's different than we're having trouble in our relationship. Oh, wow. Do you see the difference? It is very different.
So, doing that mindset work is really a powerful tool for transformation
Yes.
on any level, really.
Yes. Yes.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today, Dr. Cousins?
Yeah. The most important thing, as I point out in my book, is to see the world as the spiritual teacher. Okay, that's the most important thing. So we take all experiences as a gift from God, as a way to elevate ourselves spiritually. Now, we may not see that immediately, but if we have the view, we can transform all our experiences, whether you see without consciousness, oh, that was negative. No, there's no negative experience. It's just an opportunity to grow spiritually. So that's the first thing. The second thing is having the intent to wake up. Now, that's not a goal, but it's the intent to see life as that opportunity. And the third thing, how important it is to stay connected to your soul. And in today's world where people are getting progressively disconnected, to do these, like I mentioned, the 6 foundations, 7-fold peace, which helps us become more and more connected. And the final thing is community. Now, you've created a community. People need support. People are feeling isolated. We need support. We've created a community, I call it the Tree of Life community, but it's called treeoflife.mn.co. So people can tune in all my talks, 360 talks plus, they're all there. This will go on that, okay? So people have an opportunity to be part of community. We have chat rooms where people can share with each other. So people don't feel isolated. Extremely, extremely important. So those are all parts, like they all play a role in the bigger picture of helping us, again, to expand spiritually. And ultimately, remembering there's only God.
There's
And to see
only
God in all creation.
Exactly. As my husband says, there's only one person on the bus.
That's right.
And Dr. Cousins, if people want to reach you, where can they reach you?
So there's 2 places, drcousins.com. That's a real easy one. And that's COUSENS, okay? And then also treeoflife.mn.co. Those are the 2 places where people can tune in, but that's where all my materials are. So as we're building an overall community to uplift the whole society.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for being my guest today and helping our listeners on their journey of spiritual liberation.
But I want to bless you, Linda, for your good work.
Thank you.
And may it continue to expand. And actually, I want to bless all the listeners for being open enough to want to be and listen to you and to what's going on about expanding their mystical experiences and becoming more and more connected to the divine.
Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Wonderful. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Exploring the Mystical Side of Life. You will find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor.fm. You'll find me at thoughtchange.com. Come and pick up your copy of Learning to Listen and see what energy medicine can do for you. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate your likes, comments, and shares. And remember to subscribe.